I think you have to be able to honestly, like you said, to recover yourself. There has to be like no stone that you're not willing to turn over. I just think that's what saved me and kind of kept me on the right path. And so if I ever get offended because somebody's asking me something, if I react, it's usually because there's a lot of truth to it.
That was my guest this week, Chris Robinson of Beards and Booty on Instagram. You're listening to the Recover Yourself podcast, where we talk about what we're recovering to beyond what we're recovering from. I'm your host, MartinJon, and as you may have gleaned from that intro, I do ask Chris a few pointed questions, which he is all too ready to address openly and honestly. A few weeks ago, I interviewed Nikki Myers, founder of Yoga 12-Step Recovery, and Chris is a certified Y12SR instructor, but these two interviews couldn't be more different. Chris, thank you so much for joining me today.
Great to be here, man.
How much time do you have, like, sober?
Yeah, I am about 5.5 years sober.
And I just interviewed Nikki Myers yesterday, and that was a wonderful conversation. And we got really deep, and we talked about how yoga could be seen as an addiction. We talked about her story a little bit and whatnot. What attracted you to Y12SR?
So I found Y12SR after I found yoga. Yoga was a huge part of my recovery, kind of like the what's next in my recovery, where, you know, after about 1.5 to 2 years, I started kind of like feeling, okay, there's gotta be more to this, because while I'm not like taking in substance and I'm not physically trashing my body and I'm not ruining my life with terrible decisions, the mind and like my internal just like being was not settled. So, you know, I found yoga. I completed my RYT 200 training, and I thought, you know what, damn, this stuff is really, really helpful. And I wish I would have known about it when I was going through treatment. So I saw that Nikki was doing her teacher training in Boston. So I flew up to Boston and took part in that training. And it was super eye-opening to me to see how you could directly relate kind of yoga, whether it be the asana portion, and kind of also like the meditative. I mean, yoga, that's how yoga started. Yoga started with guys just sitting in a forest and meditating. Then asana came along after that. But how you could relate that to the 12 steps. Right. So like, maybe not everybody's a big AA person or a 12-step person, but I think the blend of that plus like, you know, so it's getting people in a community to where they could sit down and like have a meeting and talk about their feelings, and then immediately take what they've talked about. And if it's like kind of stuck in their body, you take them through like a 45-minute asana practice and they can kind of work that stuff out. You know, it's like magic. It was incredible.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I found Y12SR.
In your recovery, a lot of what I'm hearing is that you moved within your recovery to serve.
Yes. Yeah. So I was a selfish prick when I was still out there, you know, drinking and doing the whole thing. And I think probably a lot of us fit that mold when we were still using whatever, you know, the substance may be. And what I found is, as I moved through sobriety, yes, it was great that I had saved my own life. It was great for me. It was great for my family, friends, and loved ones. But like, there was something more there. That whole, like, I don't love cliches, but they're cliches for a reason. So like, we had to give it away, you know, to keep it, that whole deal. And I didn't find the rooms of AA to be a place that I was necessarily going to give it away. I didn't love the rooms so much. So that service kind of led from the yoga standpoint. Like I laid the groundwork when I got the certification, and then I thought, wow, what a great way to serve, you know, and kind of bring it in strictly for sobriety and for people that needed kind of that, you know, that type of community.
Yeah. So right now, I mean, you know, just kind of like bringing this back around, like right now we're in a time real upheaval in our society and whatnot with coronavirus and everything else. How are you coping with this desire to serve and your family and yourself, and like, where is the balance for you in that, and how are you finding it?
Yeah. And balance is such a tricky thing, right? Like it's kind of a buzzword. We talk about balance, and I don't really know that we ever achieve balance.
If your balance is rigid, you will fall, right? Like,
Yeah.
so it's always moving. It's all like you have to, or you're going to fall over. But again, in terms of that conversation that you're in with, servicing your family, yourself, your wellness, your well-being, your own practices, like where are you finding the direction that you feel is right?
And I think feel is like the key word there. And that comes from, my practice of meditation and mindfulness, and that all stems from kind of like my yoga experience. It is kind of like a felt sense that I get inside of me, and then and mentally, where I know, like, ooh, missing a little bit over here, or not spending enough time with the family, a little too involved with work. Okay, things are good here with family, with work. What am I doing for my community to kind of like offer out help of any kind? And that's kind of what's led me to like start writing again, and like classes, and like getting back into teaching and posting more on Instagram, where it's not really about it's not like an ego thing or anything to me. It's more that I think if anybody needs help, I know that I did when I was going through it, like where I just search and search and search for somebody that said something that I could relate to. And if I get 5 people that cross my page and it helps them, then I'm good with that. So I think getting back into that has really helped kind of balance me out to where now I'm doing all of the things, pretty well. That feels good.
Yeah. And that's going to bring me down to thinking clearly. So you have a lot of things in your life and you're balancing it out, and your family, I mean, I don't want to say your family's new. You have a newborn, or you have a young child, like a 1-year-old.
9 months.
Like 9 months. So yeah,
Yeah,
not even one. So like that, you're still figuring that shit out, right? And let's start there. How has that changed how you see yourself?
Only in like every way possible. I never really understood, I got like, I was the guy that would be like, why the hell are these people still, like, why are they posting so many baby pictures? I get it. You have kids, right? And until I had one, and I think that she's been probably the greatest teacher that I've had. It causes me to like, it reflects back to me so many areas that I'm still real human, not that I beat myself up about, but where am I not patient? Where have I learned to not let go? Where have I learned that my importance in the world is like not the most important, like it's equal. It's not less than or more. It's just equal. So she's just been an incredible teacher for me. It's been amazing.
So in terms of your like using, how and what kind of like really sparked you to see yourself differently within recovery?
I used alcohol to basically numb out kind of all of the negative self-talk that, I still work with, today. Like it's something that I openly talk about, where, even after substance, like still battled with depression and anxiety. I've always said like mindfulness is not a cure for anything. It's simply to bring awareness to things. It kind of like shines a light on things.
Right.
But, I started to see that I was kind of a version of I was just a facsimile of like of a person, of myself. Like I wasn't really that person. It was a front that I was putting on, if that makes sense.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, a lot of walls, a lot of armor, a lot of, bravado, machismo, like, yeah, man, I'm all good. And when I went through the process of getting sober, it was literally like shattering like all of that. And, I started to cry for no reason. I started to talk about what I was actually feeling, even if I felt embarrassed about it. So this kind of like, it was this whole new beginning. I honestly felt like I was just stepping into my life at age, 34.
This idea that like we are a facsimile of us, right? Like that's a beautiful analogy or way of looking at it, because we are us, and inside we're us always, right? But what we put on the outside and what we believe about ourselves are things that we've been told from other people. What were some of the lies that you were telling yourself and you didn't ever, like in your mind, you truly believed this was who you were? And then those things like have fallen away over the last maybe year and a half.
God, I love that, because that's something that I've been like really just, it has been the great work of my sobriety, right? Like that was one of the things that I found to be true, that has helped me so much, is that I was living a life that I was told I should live, and it was never really mine. It was never really my idea of my life. It was what I'd been told since God bless my parents. They're fantastic people and all of that, and they did the best that they could with what they were given. Yeah. But all the while, like you said, in here we are what we are, and that's always constantly changing. However, I was told that life was lived a certain way. Like, you went to school, then you went to college, and you got a job, and then you worked to get the best paying job, and you wanted to be the manager and the manager of the managers, and kind of move up and all that. And what I learned was that wasn't what I wanted. And what it took was for me to go out and actually have to live that life, hate myself for it, try to drown it in alcohol, fail. I had a business that, that failed during the housing crash, and, financially I was crushed. And all these things started happening, and it was kind of like, at the time I was so angry and so bitter, but I look back on it now and I go, you know what, this was like all of the signposts that a lot of us may see, that, whoa, slow down, wrong way for you, guy, like, guy or girl, go a different direction. So those were things that I had to learn, that I can trust my own decisions for my life. Like, I know what I want. I don't need to live up to the version of somebody else, of their life for me.
And that's hard. It's really hard to kind of sit down and be like, I know what I want, because I'm going to tell you, I don't, right? Like, I mean, I do. I'm the only one that does, but I'm also constantly unsure, right? Like, I'm constantly doubting. I'm constantly, and it's okay. That's not a bad thing. It's like, it's just part and parcel to the job that we have in front of us.
It's part of the deal, where we don't know how to do this because we've never done it. Like, all we can ever pull from is what we've already experienced or done. We have no idea. Like, if you think you want to be a writer, like, the only way is go write. Like, if I think I want to work in recovery and people are telling me like, there's no way you can make a living doing that, like, support a family, only way I know is to go try it. So it's very, very, it's scary. It's fearful. And that, I think, a lot of that fear-based stuff is what leads us to kind of lean on that life of what we're told to do, because then we can just go, okay, well, I'm at least following their rules, whereas on the other hand, we're crazy because we're chasing dreams.
Right. How was your experience in terms of like entering the rooms, if that's where you started your sobriety, and then like now, like, I mean, I hear from you now that like you have either stepped away or you have like done whatever work you need to do like elsewhere to find your own thing. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, so why don't you like fill me in?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I started, I went to treatment. I moved from Ohio to Florida. Florida did not have a very good reputation, still doesn't really for good treatment. When I came here and I went to a place that wasn't great, but that's where I found the rooms of AA. And I had tried to go to AA before, like I went to meetings drunk, the whole deal. And then finally down here, like I found a community that really helped me kind of build kind of a baseline or a ground level of sobriety. And it was really, for me, it was the community. It was, I got to the right meetings. I met some good people, because AA people are fucking crazy, man. Like people have this misconception that once we get sober, that if we just show up at any meeting, that all of these people are filled with wisdom and they're all set. No, because a lot of their work stops at the 60-minute meeting that they go to each week. So
they're literally just getting sober.
Yeah, just getting sober. But that's what we need in the beginning, right? It's just like we just need to stop, using. And so I started there and did the whole 90 meetings in 90 days, and as time went on, though, like you said, like first year and a half, I started to find that my time spent at meetings, there wasn't a whole lot of insight from people other than sharing like drunkalogs and complaining, and here's how I use the steps to fix or work through like a problem that I'm having, and it just didn't feel good for me. So I went out and started to work with my own therapist. I worked with yoga. Started a refuge recovery meeting here in Jupiter, Florida. I got, dabbled a little bit with SMART recovery as well, the yoga 12 steps. So really, like, what it taught me was AA was a really great kind of like, I love how like Joe Rogan will say that like religion is useful in a way of like, it's like a scaffolding to kind of build your life around. And AA for me was that, for my sobriety. I think finding as many tools as you can use in your toolbox is the most helpful. What really kind of will like drive me nuts sometimes, though, is when AA turns to like almost like dogma, and people will start attacking you if you say like, you missed a meeting, and you'll get the people that are like, oh, you're on the verge of drinking, and I don't find that to be the case at all. You're on the verge of drinking not because you missed a meeting, but probably a lot of other shit that's not going or not happening in your life.
Yeah. And that's I mean, I had 18 years clean and sober, and I had a conversation at this point with somebody, and she said, "Oh, I have 18 years," and her date was in November, and mine was in December, and we were just like, "Oh, awesome, we're doing all this great stuff." And she's like, "Where's your home group?" So up here, like you probably, I don't know if you know, but we have home groups up in like the Midwest and stuff. I know that's not normal everywhere, but and I was like, oh, hell, I haven't been to a meeting in over a decade. And after 18 years, I haven't been to a meeting in over a decade. She gave me a side eyeball. She was like, you're going to slip up. You're on a path. I was just like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I was like literally like I haven't been to a meeting in like 14 years. Like I'm not concerned,
Yeah.
And like for you to even think you can give me a side eyeball at that point, like you're still living in fear. You're still recovering from.
And that's, I love like that whole concept of, because I always felt, that I was running from something in life, to where when I finally got sober, it was like I was running towards something. And, in AA, I always felt like the vibe, not everybody, but the overwhelming majority, if I just picked a meeting out of a hat and went to it, I would feel that the vibe in the room was still that of fear. I've got to protect myself today because my disease is in the parking lot doing push-ups, and like, my life is not that small. So I needed to expand kind of like and look at all of these different avenues. And by doing all of these different things, I think I'm okay. I'm doing okay today.
Yeah, and to be fair, AA has language around people who say I'm doing okay, right? They have language to defend their place. And that's wonderful. But we all have to figure that shit out for ourselves.
We do. And I look at it as, you said you have 18 years and you said you haven't been to a meeting, 19. Yeah. So like you haven't been to a meeting in like a decade. I'll take that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're happy and you're doing your thing. And it's like, that's what's important. Not, how many meetings did you make this week? Now, for some people that is important. And, so I don't, whenever somebody tries to get into that argument with me, I'm like, does it work for you? Then fantastic. That's great.
Yeah.
It's very much like for me having a conversation about religion. I'm like, does that work for you? Fantastic. That's awesome. I think there's a lot of great things about, that particular religion. You lose me on some stuff, other stuff is great.
Right.
So,
yeah. And being heartfelt about all of that. When I hear a lot of people say, I'm meeting them where they're at, I always kind of think you're disrespecting them. Like, no, you shouldn't dumb the conversation down or not, like there are times where like, if I'm caring for you, I'm not going to ask questions that are going to obviously trigger you. I'm going to respect where you're coming from, but I don't have to like go, oh, you're here and believe that you're somewhere else. And then there's this linear sort of hierarchy of where we are, and taking the power away from counselors and therapists and stuff is kind of what I want to do because they don't have your answer. You do.
Right. You
are the answer for yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think that's the most, it's been one of the most critical pieces for me in my recovery is when I posted something about it one time where like, it is life changing when you have moments, maybe it's probably not all the time, but moments of truly trusting yourself, like what you're hearing, feeling, noticing is all in line. And you're like, yeah, and I don't need you to okay it or you to okay it or you to okay it. It's pretty powerful. Therapists and counselors and stuff can help us with that, but nobody's going to give us that answer except,
they can lead you to water, but there's water surrounding us all the time. All we got to do is drink it up.
Absolutely.
Right. Like we're up to our waist in it and we're trudging along going, where can I find it? And it's like, we're just not aware. And that, again, that's a big part of what I talk about is this idea of awareness. And so how did you find these things? Like what happened that you at 5.5 years can have this conversation?
Yeah. And it's funny because I don't know about you, like where you grew up and things like that. And I'm still, pretty new in sobriety comparatively. So like I still will get people that knew me from when I lived in Ohio that are like, whoa, who is this guy? Like you are 180 degrees, like, different person. And a lot of it was, I still to this day remember when I was in treatment and I ordered 2 books. I ordered The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer and I ordered The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And it was absolutely mind blowing for me. Like this idea of like having an inner inmate or inner roommate, whatever you want to call it. And kind of like, it just spoke to me. And that started me on this journey of kind of, like, yeah, there's more to this. Like there's more. I've been asleep for a very, very long time, and so yoga opened me up to meditation. Meditation is something that I've grown to just love. And so I started kind of like reading everything that I could get my hands on, like Joseph Goldstein's mindfulness and like, Dharma books. And then I started working with Dave Smith, who's a Dharma teacher who helped start Refuge Recovery with Noah Levine out in California. And I did a 10-day silent retreat, which, was something that kind of was like the culmination of just like my practice at that time, where it just opened up so many like doors to me, 10 days of silence is a lot. You find out a lot about what's going on inside at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really, it was like a healthy seeking, it was just kind of like, I want to know more about this. Kind of just doing a lot of research on that kind of stuff, and reaching out, not being afraid to reach out and ask questions.
Right. That's that's a big part of like the addict's mind, right? Like novelty seeking, right? Like it's novel, right? To be like, I'm going to be quiet for, like, I know when I was in my early sobriety days, like I was hospitalized twice for malnutrition and dehydration because I would constantly challenge myself and punish myself and do these things like be like, oh, you didn't do something right. So I would punish myself by like forcing myself to not eat for a day or whatever,
You bring up like such a good point there, because it can go overboard, right? We go from the addiction of substance to kind of like this other thing, like you had put it, like pacifiers, or like, this, like the novelty seeking. And I had a recent experience like that where I had to really step back and go, well, hold on, man. Like, you got the stuff that you need to know to like make your life kind of more easeful and improved. Why are you still feverishly going after like another certificate, another training? What's up there? Like, what's going on behind that? And I spent a lot of money on a training that was not something it was not what it was cracked up to be. And I looked and that's it was something that hit me like right in the face. And I said, you know what? You're seeking novelty. You are seeking like, you're looking for like more approval because you're going to complete this, get a certificate in what, you have the certificate. So it's something to be very aware of. And I think it's real, right? For us, especially us that are coming from the addiction, it can just pop up in something else.
Yeah. And, and being a giver, you're just like, I want to give correctly.
Yes.
Right. I want to give correctly.
100%.
If you tell me how to do it, I don't have to but it is within this idea of recovering yourself that like you have something that nobody else has that you can give. And you don't believe in that, or you can't yet like really like trust that is right, because we have ideas from a culture that is now under threat that says these are the people that can tell you how to do something and then you have value.
Right. It's kind of like my teacher Dave would tell me, he's like, he'd be like, dude, you know what you're talking about. Like, you can go read another book, but there is no like right or wrong way to do this. You go and you speak or you give, there's no, this is the right way, this is the wrong way. Like you said, like, I need to give accurately. I need to give correctly. And it's like, just go fucking give, man. Like, there's no right or wrong way.
Yeah. And that's and that is, and that comes back to us, right? Like you said, I'm looking for a certificate for validation that I can do this right. So what other sorts of things do you have going on right now? Because these things are going to come up for the rest of our lives, that you're like trying to bring balance to, or trying to be like, oh, this is a lie that I tell myself, and I've been telling myself for a long time, that I need to be able to bring awareness to.
Yeah. There's kind of like two things I think that go together. And it was kind of the acceptance that my life had changed forever in another way when I got married and had a child. And then, there's also two other children in the household. So my life was changed forever. Another huge change. Like there was the sobriety, and it was like, oh, deep breath. I'm sober now. Like, okay, no more big changes, right? We can just kind of skate through life and it'll be fine. And that wasn't true. And I kept telling myself that like I was just going to keep doing my own, like the way that my nice little life had gone. I was going to try to fit that and like the family and everything into one. And when I found out that that wasn't going to work, you know, I got into like this case of the fuck it's, not in the sense of like wanting to use or anything like that, but like, well, if I can't go to the gym, you know, 7 days a week, then I might as well just not even go. If I can't read for, you know, 2 hours a day, then might as well stop reading. And what happened as a result of that was I started, you know, I had made a big job change. I lost my health insurance for a period of time, stopped taking my SSRIs, which I think are great for those of us that need it. And I fell into like a really deep depression. You know, it was noticeable to my family. Like my wife was asking me like, what is going on with you? You know, you're so apathetic. Like you don't really have any joy that's, you know, kind of that's going on right now. What's the deal? And I kept telling myself, everything's fine. I'm sober, so everything's fine. I'm sober for everything's fine. That you'll hear that in the rooms as well. But everything was not fine. I was sober, but things were not fine.
Right.
So I had to start to look at myself in that, you know what, I need to accept this change and like everything that's really amazing about it. And I also need to suck it up in a way and go like, suck it up in a way and give up. Like I was trying to control again and say, you know, I need to go back to the primary care doc and go see my therapist and get back into that. And I did. So and I think that that's a direct result of my meditation and my mindfulness practice, where thank God I was able to kind of like, after being told externally, I was also able to sit with that and go, it's time to make some changes and stop with the bullshit.
Yeah. I'm going to challenge a couple things.
Yeah.
And it's not, and again, like this is always coming from a loving space. And,
I love it.
And I want to ask you about your decision to get married. Was that, or do you see that as being, and maybe even like after getting married, how did your thoughts of what your wife and her children were going to do for you so that you didn't have to do it for yourself, or were there places that you utilized your marriage as a way to relieve yourself of some responsibility?
Sure. Damn, that's a good one. And it's true. That's, I mean, if to look at it very honestly, right? Yeah, there's a lot of, recover yourself. And it was holding up a mirror to reflect back at me, like areas that I was lacking. You know, where expectation of like, well, if I don't do it, you know, my wife will pick up the slack here, whether it be like cleaning or cooking dinner, for, you know, doing things for the kids, organizing like finances and stuff like that, where I started to get into, well, I don't have to do it because she'll do it if I don't do it. And man, that's a shitty thing to do. I had to actually look at that myself and go, all right, Chris, like partnership is not like I lean on you, or, you know, we don't lean on each other. You know, we're side by side in this deal. And that was a big eye opener. And my wife, I'll give her credit. She's brought that to my attention because this is all new. I'm at heart, I'm an addictive kind of selfish person that I need to constantly kind of check myself on these things. Right. So yeah, it's a great question.
Well, thank you for entertaining that question. And you know, because like as I was like, I want to ask this, I'm like, if I don't ask it right, you can really be mad. No,
I'm like an open book, and I love that, you know, that I can that's one of those things where I think you have to be able to honestly, like you said, to recover yourself. There has to be like no stone that you're not willing to turn over. I just think that's what saved me and kind of kept me on the right path. And so if I ever get offended because somebody's asking me something, if I react, it's usually because there's a lot of truth to it.
Right. And I know that, right? Like,
yeah, right.
I'm aware. So in relation to that last question of like, all right, so you got married and then you realized that there was all of this kind of place where you can be like, I can just drop the ball, MVD. So my question, even though I don't know the way to phrase it, is how did you reestablish your own personal relationship with yourself that was able to reframe the marriage that you had with an external, your wife and her kids?
Right. Yeah, definitely. I had to become more, it started with acceptance that life had changed. Like I still, for some reason, hadn't reached this point of like letting go that it's all different now. This is a different time, and things are not going to be what it was. Like you don't live by yourself with just like a dog, and you can't just sit and meditate for hours on end. So what it came down to like finding ways to now mold the things that help me so much into my life that I have now, and realizing like, oh yeah, it still works. Like if I leave for work, 10 minutes early, and I can sit in my car and meditate rather than like having to, take time away from the kids. And as I started to bring the things back into my life in this new way, I started feeling more comfortable. I started feeling like, because I started to feel not that my family or wife was doing this, but I started to feel like I was being trapped, at one point, like, oh, they're trying to take me down. Like I can't do any of these things that are so healthy. No, I just needed to figure out a new way to do that. And as I started back on these kind of like these really important things for me, I started to notice like the things that I was responsible for at the house got done. My relationship was happy and improved, and conversations were had and communication was there, and all of those things came back as well as a result of me like doing the work on me.
And I know that was like reframing where things were and how things were set in terms of trying to maintain some balance. I understand that, but what was the conversation what was that hard fucking conversation that you had to have with yourself that was just like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah. Like, the conversation went something like this, like, hey, asshole, like, listen to what you teach. And what I mean by that is like, I tell people that, like the work that we always hear about, like do the work. The work is like part of it, but the real work is you now need to go and do in your life. You now need to take action. You need to take action in your life that reflects this work that you're doing. Like, what are you doing sitting on a cushion? It's not solving any of the problems of where I'm dropping the ball in my real life. It can shine the light on those things. So where should my time be spent? Should it be spent on a cushion, or should it be spent washing the dishes and helping out cleaning up after dinner? Should it be, spent in a 90-minute yoga class 5 times a week, or can I go to like one class and get what I need and then go practice yoga at work or in the grocery store when it's like crazy because of a pandemic, or like help somebody else, So I needed to get back to applying the work to how I live,
right. And that's that's a big step, because when we're living in this space of pacifying, during our pacifying, we always have the thought, I don't want to do this.
Yes.
I don't want to do this. And it's so easy to just disregard that thought, because we've done that. Like we have done that with drugs and alcohol, right? Like I know that I was drinking and smoking for a longer period of time than I wanted to. And I physically was I smoked cigarettes for a year and hated every cigarette I had.
Yep.
We get caught up in that. And so having that conversation, and what the work is listening to that little voice that's saying, I don't want to do this.
Yes.
But if you listen to it, you're going to have to accept that not only did you not want to do it, but it wasn't healthy and you chose to do it.
Right. And what I would notice is like what the mind says as opposed to what the body felt. The mind is sitting there kind of like, you're fine, dude. Like, just keep doing what you're doing. They need to get on the train or get off. And it's like, but your body is telling you like, nah, this isn't right.
And there's just a little pain, right? Like there's pain in your heart. There's because like you love these people and you're defending yourself. They're not attacking you.
Right. Nope. No.
And that is such a beautiful thing to like, that is the work, right? Because you're going to find that throughout your life.
Absolutely. And it was, it was so clear that all I was going to do was what I had always done in life, which was kind of like try to just run away from things when it felt like I was wrong, and so being able to come forward and just go like, yeah, I was fucking up there. I wasn't being like the recovered me. So doesn't mean I can't be, doesn't mean I won't, that I'll, but let's shine a light on this and like, let's get back to good.
And do more than shine a light on it. Let's we have bodies, right?
Yeah.
Our spirit, and I always look at like we are 100% spirit and 100% body, and we have to be able to once again balance those two. And if our spirit is shining a light on some shit, and our body says, or our mind, right? Like the immature mind says, don't worry about it. If we listen to our mind, our body is going to remind us, no, that's not what you want to do. But our body whispers and our mind shouts.
Yep.
So that never works.
I think that one of the things that I tend to talk a lot about is kind of like, I think the practices of yoga and meditation a lot of the times it gets confusing for people. It seems very kind of unreachable, especially with yoga, where somebody may look, all of us are on Instagram, right? And everything is like, bendy pretzel girl and like the latest like Lululemon clothes, and people think like I can't do that. The pictures of people sitting cross-legged and like they're just like at peace, and people think like, well, my mind doesn't work like that, so why even try? And I just think it's so important that people know that these practices are super accessible, and they're also way more simple than what kind of what we think. There's a lot of different ways to meditate or but there's nothing to obtain. We think there's no like secret realm to reach. There's no like other world to get to. Like literally you can feel it in your body, especially like during these times right now where things are so crazy. Even if you just take like 5 minutes and watch your breath, you'll notice the mind will slow. It's not going to quiet. Like the brain thinks just like the heart beats. It's always going to be that way until we die. But just these little tips of like taking 5 minutes to watch your breath, breathe in, breathe out, breathe slowly, and like seeing the difference that can make in your mind and your body. Go to a yoga class. I promise you, they're not all bendy pretzel people, and like it's accessible, and it's super, super helpful. And as being a teacher myself, like we welcome you, all of you. Come. So I just hope that people know that it's helpful and that it's out there for everyone.
It is. Oh, Chris, thank you so much for joining me and sharing so much. I really appreciate your time and all that you're sharing. And I have to say, Wise beyond your sober years, my friend.
Oh, thank you, man. It's awesome. I'm super excited to be here, and like just I love the running from, running to, and I hope all of us just kind of continue to lift each other up and continue to run to something rather than run from it.
I always love it when we can address that there is no right or wrong way to do something. And I want to thank Chris for going everywhere we went today. You can find a link to connect with Chris on Instagram in the description of this episode. Without Chris and my other guests, I could never paint a complete picture of what it means to recover yourself. You see, we're each doing it differently and on our own and in our own way. Because of that, everyone is going to recover themselves differently. That means there's no concrete answers as to how you're going to recover yourself. There's no timeline, no destination. Listening to this podcast exposes you to information and ideas about how some of us with long-term sobriety have approached and achieved amazing lives filled with the ability to be vulnerable, trust, and to love. I hope this podcast can be a light for you, guiding the way to your recovering yourself. I encourage counselors and groups to use this podcast to introduce and discuss big picture recovery and how recovering ourselves is a journey we're all on, regardless of our path. Consider heading over to anchor.fm and supporting this podcast with a donation. While you're there, feel free to leave me a voice message with comments, suggestions, and criticisms, all of which I would be grateful to receive. If you're someone in long-term recovery and can relate to the concepts presented here, reach out to me on my website or social media. Once again, I'm your host, managing long-term sobriety, MartinJon, and until next time, keep recovering yourself.